My name is Catherine Maloney. I'm founder of Elevate Her, and tonight we are so fortunate to have the amazing Lucy Silvester doing a webinar on pilot assessment top tips. So this is incredibly exciting, and if you've got any questions for Lucy, which I'm absolutely sure you do, please put them in the chat box as we go through. We're going to come to the end and then I'll loop back to questions because, as you can imagine, we're going to have a lot of people on the call. So putting hands up probably isn't the easiest course of action. So if you've got any questions throughout the call, please just put them in the chat box and we'll loop back to them at the end. And just a couple of other bits of housekeeping. If you could just make sure that your microphone's on mute. You're really welcome to have your camera off or on as you please. And also this webinar is being recorded as well, just so you know. And without further ado, I will now hand over to the amazing Lucy.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Right, I'm hoping my IT skills work here and we can get the PowerPoint, the correct PowerPoint open.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So I can see my notes. Can you just see this, the presentation?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. We can see it fine.
Okay, cool. So thank you all for joining. We obviously, not obviously, but we do work with Elevate Her, and it's fantastic to see so many of you joining. The work that Catherine and her team are doing is fantastic, and we love working alongside them. So I feel incredibly honoured to be asked to come and speak to you all this evening. So I don't particularly like talking about myself, but I thought sort of just to give you a bit of a background about me before we launch into the academy stuff. And if there's anybody, I suppose, that doesn't want to be a pilot on the call, I can kind of talk you through some of the other perks and things about working in aviation. So I started back in 2000 with an airline called Monarch. I did a year with them and then I moved to an airline called BMI and I was there for 13 years, which I absolutely loved. So top picture, there's me on my course, and then the picture of me and one of my closest friends there was the year that BA bought BMI. So that was one of our last flights together. I've been incredibly lucky. I have had a couple of flying lessons. I will be very honest, I have no capability to be a pilot. I get why you all want to do it. I love being up in the air. Second we're coming into land, I want to close my eyes. So I think I'm probably better staying on the recruitment side of things. I was incredibly lucky to go and do an air traffic tour at Heathrow, and that's me beside Concorde, which parked beside the runway, which you'll see if you've flown into Heathrow. That's me trying my best to fly a 787 sim. Obviously incredibly lucky to be able to go into the sim hall that we have at our Global Learning Academy. Couple of personal ones there, but so that's me. That's my dad actually. We went on a flight to Boston, and obviously one of the massive perks of working for an airline is staff travel. So me and my dad went to Boston for the weekend. Super cheap flights, but we flew business both ways, and that's our new club suite, and it was the first time we'd been in it. So and my dad is as big an aviation geek as I am, so he was super excited to be there. That's then me stood in a 747 engine, which it will forever be the best aircraft that's ever flown. So we were lucky enough to see one of them in the hangar. Another great thing about working in aviation is the teams that you'll work with. The bottom left-hand corner are the project pilots that work in the team, and again, incredibly lucky to be surrounded by a wonderful team that make me look good. And then I joke that I felt I'd made it in life when I turned up at Skyborne to visit them one time, and I had a reserved parking space. So I thought that's me. I've got to where I need to in life. I've got a reserved parking space. I am joking. That again is the team at Pilot Careers Live, which we absolutely love. They are crazy busy days, but speaking to aspiring pilots for about 8 hours. But we meet some incredible people from all different ages, different backgrounds, and that was the last one a couple of weeks ago at Heathrow. And then the final picture, again, real proud moment. So that's me with Guy Bowen, who's the project pilot on the Academy, and Alex Norman, who's our assessment manager. And when that was us launching or pressing the button to go live from the very first Speedbird Academy, almost 3 years ago now, or 3 years ago now. And we then sat and watched the hits on the website, and it very quickly got up to thousands, and we were like, oh my goodness, what are we up against now? But we knew it would be a huge success and be hugely popular, but I think we were slightly blown away, and kind of that moment sat there at our desk pushing a button and pushing it live, I don't think any of us will ever forget. I suppose just so my background is I worked as cabin crew for Monarch and BMI. When I was at BMI, I went into training and recruitment, and then but from a cabin crew side, and I started at BA just over 11 years ago now in the central recruitment team, and thought coming into recruitment function, they'll probably ask me to look after cabin crew, and they asked me to look after flight operations. And I thought, gosh, I've flown with pilots, but I know very little about recruiting them. So 11 years later, I know lots of useless information about pilots' licenses and medicals and everything you need to do to get up in the air, but still love every minute. The academy is obviously a huge part of the role we do. I did 8 years in our central recruitment team, and then almost 3 years ago, I moved across to work in flight operations, and I now manage the team that run all the pilot recruitment for BA, but also the onboarding as well, along with the outreach work we do along with our emerging talent team. So kind of hugely varied role. Can't say I grew up dreaming of working in recruitment, maybe fell into it a little bit, but wouldn't change it for the world and love it. And I suppose one of the reasons we love it so much is because of the Speedbird Pilot Academy. So hopefully you've all heard of it and know what it's about, but I'll talk you through what it is, and again at the end, if you've got any questions, obviously happy to answer them. So when you log on, there'll be lots of or 5 or 6 eligibility questions. So it will be things like, are you the right height? Do you have the right to live and work in the UK? Do you meet the academic criteria? So you have to be able to answer yes to all of those to then be able to submit an application, and we can talk about the application process as well. So as I've mentioned a couple already, so you do need to have the right to live and work in the UK without sponsorship to apply. You can be 17 to apply, but you need to be 18 to start training. And when we launch the campaign each year, so the launch date for next year is still to be confirmed, but you will need to be 18 on the 1st of January 2027 to apply for next year's academy. We ask that you're fluent in English, and if English isn't your native language, you need to do an academic IELTS test and get 5.5. You don't need that to apply, but if you're successful, we would then ask you to do that. Valid passport which permits unrestricted worldwide travel. You need to be between 5'2" and 6'3". If you're over 6'3", we can put you through a functionality check. At the moment, 5'2" is a hard stop at the lower end of the height limit. You need to be able to obtain a UK Class 1 medical with no restrictions. You don't necessarily get issued an initial Class 1 now with a restriction on it. You get an exemption to go into training, which is called an NCAT. We do accept that. So if you're concerned about that you might have a medical issue that you need an OML, which is a restriction on the medical, don't worry about that. There is a process to work with that. And then before the training starts, you need to have completed all our background referencing and pre-employment checks, all the overseas and UK criminal record checks as well. And then we do something called an accreditation check, which part of that is looking at your social media. So you do need to be a little bit careful what you're posting online. We obviously want you to have fun and post what you want to post, but if you've been on a BA flight and you've said something bad about BA, we then wouldn't want that to be, if you're on an aircraft and something happened and they then find a post from years ago with you saying how awful BA was, not the best look. So just be careful if it's anything outside of your personal life, if you're commenting on anything political or how you feel about something, you've got a digital footprint and it will stay there for years. So onto the slightly more positive, what's included. So it's an integrated course, so it's 18 months either at Skyborne, which are now based in Gloucester and Bournemouth, and then Vero Beach in Florida, or FTE Jerez, which is in Jerez in Spain. So you're with those two flight schools for around 18 months and you'll come out at the end with your commercial pilot's license. Your accommodation's included for the whole time that you're in training. FTEs are fully catered schools, so you just get a subsistence allowance. Skyborne isn't, so we'll give you a food and subsistence allowance. All the flights to Spain and the States are included. If you don't already have a Class 1, which you definitely don't need to have, we will pay for the Class 1 medical and then either the EASA or FAA Class 2 or 3, depending where you're training. While you're in training, you get support from our school liaison pilots, and they are your first point of call after the school. If you've got anything that you want to talk to them about, they're really there they are there as a support for you. And then if they can't answer the question on it, they need support, they would then come to myself or Guy. And then once you're out of training, we would make you a job offer for either Gatwick or Heathrow, and your type rating for the 320 is paid, and you become an employee from the first day. So you're paid while you're doing your type rating. And I suppose what's really exciting, mid-September, 15th of September, we had the first Speedbird 1 Academy students join BA at Heathrow, and then last week I was down in Gatwick to meet the first 4 that was starting at Gatwick. So we're now already we've still got people waiting to go into training from this year's recruitment, but we've now got people coming out and starting at BA as second officers, which is super exciting. So there's lots of information online, but a couple of bits to go through with you. So the assessment process for next year is under review, so I won't go into too much detail, but mainly because I can't. But keep an eye out. We will be running webinars nearer the time, but from a generic point of view, there's lots of stuff that you can be doing now to start preparing for an application next year. And advice would be, do not leave it till we announce and say, right, it's going live in a couple of weeks. You need to be preparing for this now. And I suppose one of the most frustrating things that we sometimes hear is people saying, oh yeah, I'm just going to throw in an application and see what happens. If that's your attitude, you're unlikely going to get through the process. You need to be passionate about this and committed to it. So I've already mentioned we work with 2 training organisations, so Skyborne and FTE. Skyborne run open days. Obviously, FTE is slightly harder to visit because they're in Spain, but so I'm actually off there on Friday for graduation, and it's a beautiful part of the world, so maybe an excuse for a holiday if you wanted to go and visit. But have a look at both the flight schools. I suppose ultimately at the end you come out with the same license in hand, but they're 2 different offerings. Skyborne, you spend a year in the UK and 6 months out in Florida. FT, you spend 18 months in Spain. You do get breaks while you're in Spain. For example, they close over Christmas, you're home for 2 weeks at that point, but 18 months you are away for a long period of time. So have a look at both their websites. At the application stage, you can put a preference to the flight school that you want to go to. Slightly frustratingly, there seems to be a rumour out there that if you select the flight school you want to, we don't like that. We have no preference either way. If you've got a strong preference to one of the flight schools, please select it. If you really don't, you can put no preference and then we'll allocate you to a flight school. But once you're allocated to a flight school, you then can't change to the other one. So if you have a preference, make sure that you select it. There are some practice materials online. So on our careers website, on the future pilot pages, if you click through to learn more, there's a PDF on there with some information around the online test, the upfront online testing. So the testing we did last year, we did a situational judgment test, a maths test, and a checking test. If you're currently not studying maths, would recommend starting to spend half an hour once a week, just brushing up on your maths skills. It's one of those things that you'll have a skills fade on if you're not doing it regularly. So get practicing your maths now, and also for interview preparation, you can start thinking about, so everything's done around the pilot competencies. If you haven't heard of those, Google them, and then you should have a couple of examples per competency, because when you come and sit in front of us, you're going to be nervous, your mind's going to go slightly blank. So if you've got more than one example, hopefully you'll be able to remember one of those when you're sat in front of us. I'm going to mention the word research a couple of times. It's so important to understand, one, what you're signing up to as the program and the academy, and what the actual training that you're going to go into looks like, but also to understand BA and Euroflyer and the culture of the airlines, and where it is you are going to spend potentially a very long career and the rest of your career. So make sure you do research, and I've got some slides on that as well. Joining webinars, you're already on this one, which is fantastic. We run bi-monthly webinars ourselves, and I'll show you how to find that. So make sure you're joining those each time. There's lots of questions, top tips. So yeah, make sure you continue to join those. You might learn something slightly different each time. Sorry, I was muted for a second. CVs, there's lots of templates online, top tips in a very quick way for CVs. Keep it simple, make sure we can see who you are and that you're selling yourselves to us. No more than 2 pages, and when you're uploading it, upload it as a PDF. Because our applicant tracking system, sometimes the format, if you've got clever formatting, it will move the formatting and then we can't read the CV. So keep it simple, and make sure you're selling yourself to us. And then I've talked about preparation for the interview. So it is really around those pilot competencies and making sure that you can show us that you understand what each of those competencies are and give us an example of when you've demonstrated that behaviour. So if you've attended any of the webinars before, there are we get lots of applications. So I think last year we was nearly 30,000 people actually hit the website to look at starting an application. Somewhere around 20,000 people completed an application, and 8,000 people went on to pass all the testing and then be screened. So at that point, you need to stand out on your CV and your application. So you're already doing the right things by being online this evening. You're showing motivation for the role. Joining Elevate Her, again, a fantastic thing to help you stand out. They'll give you lots of information and offer you lots of opportunity. And then there's other things like, and these are not exhaustive lists, but depending on your age, if you're at school, things like the Duke of Edinburgh, any extracurricular activities that you can do. So team sports, there's the Air Training Corps, but the Army and Police, and there's the Sea Scouts. There's lots of different organisations that will help you build up around your teamwork, your leadership, your communication, which are the things we're looking for. Other things, if you're the right age, a Saturday job. As pilots, you're behind a locked door, but actually we want you to be out interacting with the passengers, and that doesn't always come naturally to people. So any customer service experience that you can get will help you stand out as well. And then I suppose for people that are not just coming out of education, who are in the workplace already, it's looking at what you do now and thinking about the transferable skills. So in every job, whatever you do, there will be, you're likely to have a customer. So it doesn't necessarily, the customer is not necessarily always, in a shop dealing with somebody, for example, a teacher, the parents are your customer. So it's the interactions with them. So sometimes it's thinking outside the box, but also thinking what your transferable skills are. So if you haven't already, again, Google the pilot competencies. There's 9 of them. One of them's being split out, so there will soon be 10. The ones about manual flight we don't assess. So all the ones other than manual flight are the ones that you should be looking at and thinking about how you can demonstrate that to us. So talks about research. So these are a couple of things that kind of really easy and wouldn't take very long. So on ba.com, so where you go to book, hopefully you'll want to fly with BA and go on holiday when you do. But if you go onto ba.com, at the very bottom of the page, there is a link to our media centre. So any news story that goes out will go on there. So, for example, the latest news story has gone out is about us putting free Wi-Fi on all our aircraft. And we're one of the first UK airlines to be doing that. So if you come into an interview and you can say, I read the article about Wi-Fi, we know you've done some research. So, and again, hopefully you're interested in aviation anyway. There's lots of news stories, not just about pilots, about the whole business as a whole. I talked about the webinars that we run. So on the homepage of the careers website, so the careers website also is a fantastic tool. There is so much information on there. There's stuff about life at BA. There's all the different careers areas. Talks about what your journey will look like in the recruitment process, and will link you to some of the stories from our media centre as well. But there is so much information on there. You could spend hours once you're on there having a read. On the homepage of the careers website, about halfway down, there's a tab there called Meet the Pilot Recruitment Team. You need to register the details on Zoom, or your details on Zoom, and then you can join those calls. And as I said, we run those every other month. The next one's on the 2nd of December. They're usually on a Wednesday, but that's running on a Tuesday next month. We spend half an hour talking about something BA related. So again, giving you more information to add to your research. And then we do half an hour Q&A, depending how many people are on the call. If you've not heard of Speedbird Z, we have a wonderful emerging talent team that run our emerging talent, and part of that is the Speedbird Z. It's an online learning platform. You can register. There's pilot related content on there. It also links to, we run a couple of events called the Your Flying Future, which is where we invite up to 200 people to our head office once a quarter, and we talk about day in the life of a trainee pilot, day in the life of a BA pilot. We do a group exercise, we do a maths test. So it's all the prep stuff that you should be doing ahead of applying for the academy. And then if you want to know any more information about the Speedbird Pilot Academy, again, on the careers website, if you go to the Future Pilot page, there's the Speedbird Pilot Academy tab and the Learn More, and then you can go through and learn everything that you need to. So there's loads of information on there. So very easy, lots of stuff to hand for you to have a read. And then if you're not already following British Airways on LinkedIn, I would highly recommend that you do, along with following key people like Sean Doyle. If you didn't see, Sean Doyle was at the Skyborne graduation last month, and he posted on LinkedIn about being there and how proud he was about the cadets coming out of training and starting BA. But BA once a quarter will post about the highlights. So these are the quarter 3 highlights that were posted the other week. I won't read through them all. They're on the screen there for you. But even if you just read that before I'm not saying do that, because that would be slightly lazy research, but it's a good place to start. It gives you some key stats about where we are as an airline, but also if in the interview, if we happen to ask you something like, what do you know about BA? What are some of our key initiatives running at the moment? Just from that one post from BA on LinkedIn, you'd be able to know a couple of key stats. That information also gets posted on Instagram. It might go on Facebook and X as well, but 100% goes on LinkedIn and Instagram. So if you're on social media, make sure you're following BA to keep up to date with what's going on. So I think that's enough of me talking. So it's over. Hopefully you've got some questions. So it's over to you to ask the questions.
Thank you so much, Lucy. No, that was really, really informative. So thank you so much. And yeah, the questions have been absolutely going off, which is brilliant to see. It's also really lovely to see everyone helping each other out in the question box as well. So those of you who know answers to things and have been helping out, that's really lovely to see. So thank you. There are quite a lot of questions, as I'm sure you would imagine. So I will just be kind of running through them. If they're ones that are similar, I may not go to everyone, just so you guys know. So someone has asked, does the travel document supplied, do they need to have a passport or can it be a similar travel document?
So if the travel document gives you the unrestricted right to live and work in the UK, that's fine. There are some, I know I don't, I'm not an expert in this at all, but I suppose if you're unsure that you have the right to live and work, because there are some visas that, if you weren't born in the UK and don't hold a British passport, there are some documents that will allow you the unrestricted right to live and work. So, but if you are unsure, we have an email address, which is for short, spar@ba.com. So if you can't, what we'd always ask is, if you're asking us a question, do your own research online first. And then if you're stuck and can't find the answer, drop us an email and we can come back to you with any information that we have.
That's brilliant. And also, we've had quite a few questions about Class 1 medicals. Is this something that you'd advise having before applying, or is it something that you can kind of get if you go through the process?
So, 100% you do not need a Class 1 medical. The majority of people that were successful last year didn't have. That said, some people do, and it's not an advantage or a disadvantage to have it or not have it. If you have any underlying medical conditions that you're concerned about, though, you can get a Class 2, which is much cheaper, but is also not 100%, but is indicative of you getting or being able to get a Class 1. A Class 1 currently sitting around £800, so we wouldn't want you to spend that money if you don't need to, and if you're successful, we'll pay for it. So no, don't need it. And if you're concerned, look at getting a Class 2 rather than a Class 1.
Perfect. And speaking of Class 2s, we've got a couple of questions asking, can you still apply if you hold a PPL?
Yeah, 100%. And that's for, again, you don't need to hold a PPL, but it does show motivation towards the career. What would stop you applying is if you've done any ATPL ground school exams. Another thing as well, don't throw lots of money. Once you've got your PPL, don't throw lots of money at getting endless hours, because you're going to have to redo them all anyway. There are other airlines that offer fully funded schemes. One of them, because it's an MPL, there is a restriction of 100 hours. Once you go over that, you can't, currently anyway, that might change, but currently can't go onto an MPL scheme with over 100 hours. So yeah, so don't spend money unnecessarily, because you're going to have to do it all again anyway once you go into training. And I suppose on that note, there are lots of scholarships out there. So if you missed it, Catherine and her team offered some bursaries earlier in the year. But there's also a website called Flight Training News that lists all the scholarships that are available in the UK. So go and have a look at that. And we always say, if you can get the flying for free, take it, don't pay for it.
Very, very good advice. And can I just clarify, or someone would just like to clarify, do you finish with a frozen ATPL?
Yes, you do. Yeah. So
Perfect.
I always think in aviation, we like to confuse people. So a CPL, so a commercial pilot's license, is the same as a frozen ATPL. It's just different ways of referring to the same thing.
Amazing. And after applications, how long roughly until training starts?
Oh, that's a good question. So we concluded this year, or the outcomes went in August. We will have people start training in January next year, but the last course will start in November, because obviously we can't got over 100 people going into training. So we have to stagger you going into training to then at the end stagger you coming out. So we can train so many people a month. So we stagger you going into training so you don't all come out at the same time as well, nor with the flight schools have the capacity to do it all in one go. So if you're successful, you get a form sent out to you asking about preference of a start date. So if you're happen to be in college or uni and want to start later in the year, to date, we've always been able to accommodate that because most people want to start sooner. Those that got class one are prioritised because we know that they will get, or they have a class one to get onto those earlier courses. But it really isn't a necessity to spend the money to have it.
Brilliant. And quite an interesting question here. Bella said that she's 5'1" with no shoes. Would that be too short if she's 5'2" with shoes?
Yeah, unfortunately, at the moment, although we are, there's a big bit of work going on to look at reviewing the lower height limits. So bear with us, and as soon as we've got any date on that, we will post on LinkedIn and update the careers website if we're able to change that. But unfortunately, at the moment, 5'2" is our hard stop. But we are working on that.
That's really interesting. That also ties in with quite a lot of work that we're doing on the research side as well at the moment. So yeah, it will be really, really good to see if that improves on the lower height limit.
Yeah.
And Sasha has asked, are calculators permitted for the maths test?
They are.
They are.
So you do all the testing at home, and you are allowed a calculator. So yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. We've got a couple of questions asking how much emphasis is put on prior flight experience, when you come in for your application.
So I suppose what we would say is it's worth having half an hour up in the air. This is the 18-month training that you're going to is very intense, and you're going to need to know that this is what you want to do. So I suppose I'm not sure. I'm going to make a sweeping statement. I don't think we've recruited anybody that has zero flying experience, but we would recommend half an hour just to make sure that when you're up there, you do like it, and it is what you want to do. Beyond that, you don't need to have any flying experience. We don't necessarily put any weight to it, but what it will help with for those that you do have some flying, and it doesn't need to be fixed wing. Gliding's as great as fixed wing flying. It might give you some examples that you can use in your interview around the competency. So I suppose we don't put weight to it, but it might help you when you're in your interview with your examples.
Good stuff. There's quite a few questions actually on here about GCSE results and A-level results. Just wondering if you can maybe clarify what exactly is required to apply.
So one thing that has changed, I meant to mention that earlier, is last year the requirement was 6 GCSEs grade A to C or 5 to 9. It's now A to C or 4 to 9, and that must include maths, English and science, and that needs to be English language that you get a 4 in. You just need GCSEs. We don't look at higher education beyond that. So you obviously have to stay in education until you're 18. So if you're going on to do A levels, don't take subjects you think we're going to want you to be doing. Take subjects that you enjoy, because one, you're going to enjoy them and you're likely to do better at them. But we don't look at A level results or degrees. It's just the GCSEs.
Perfect. And we've also had a couple of questions from those who already have a frozen ATPL. Is there still a route for them to apply to fly for British Airways?
So not at the moment. So because of we are restricted with base training. So we currently train 12 people a month through base training, which every brand new pilot needs to do once in their career. And then, so at the moment for next year, that requirement's being filled with the academy students. That said, we are working with the training teams to see if we can expand the base training numbers. So advice would be is to register for job alerts on the careers website, and you'll keep up to date. So you'd be looking for the self-sponsored pathway post IR would be if you've got your frozen ATPL in hand. What also would say is we recruit most years. 2/3 of the pilots we bring in are experienced pilots from other airlines, and 1/3 are from low hours. So if you get an opportunity elsewhere, take it. We hope BA is always the end goal. So once you've got either 500 hours or 100 sectors on a qualifying aircraft, you can apply to come back to us as an experienced pilot. So don't. It always sounds a bit weird when you work in recruitment. Don't hold out for BA. If you get an opportunity, take it. And that's the same with the cadet programs. If you get another opportunity with another airline, we'd always say to take it.
Yeah, no, that's really nice advice. And we've got a couple of people asking about the maths test in particular. Is there somewhere in particular you think that they can go to practice or see like a test, example test at all?
Yeah, so on the careers website on the future pilot page, there are some prep materials. They are slightly out of date, and we know they are, but if we take them down, we don't have the functionality with the new careers website to get them back up again. So for the minute, they're still valid, the information's there, but some of the dates might read wrong. So ignore that, but the content is great. So there's 3 maths questions on there to give you an example of the sort of maths we're looking for. It's all applied maths. As we said, you can use a calculator. And it's multiple choice as well. One, and I always say the story, we went to a careers event years ago and we turned up with the maths test, and we had 100 kids sat in front of us, which we'd handed the maths test out to, and we didn't have the answers. So 2 of the pilots sat very quickly working through the answers, and it was fascinating watching them doing it, because as they'd worked on a couple of them, they'd worked out half the sum and had then looked at the answers and gone, it can only be D, for example. So that sped up how quickly. So the maths test is 25 questions in 15 minutes. You have to work very quickly. So if you've got halfway through and you realise it can only be one of them, obviously tick that answer and move on. The other recommendation is for the BBC Skill Bites website. There's some really good modules on there to work through. And as I said, don't leave it to the last minute. So, put an hour aside once a week and work through each module and just keep going back over it and over it to help you be successful.
No, that's brilliant. And I think we're kind of getting to the end of the questions. So if anyone's got a last minute question, I'm sorry, there's been a lot of questions. So feel free to put them in the box again, just because it can be quite difficult to see them all. This is quite an interesting question. Just got one saying, will there be any updates for the next round of Speedbird pilot assessment applications? Is anything changing, or is it remaining pretty much same?
Yeah, so I suppose we've changed it every year. So yes, it will change again this year. I suppose there's only so many ways we can do stuff, but we're currently working on what that looks like. So once we announce the date, keep an eye out, because we'll start to run more webinars just about the academy. We can run a bespoke webinar for Elevate Her for you all, to take you through what the process is going to look like, to help you start preparing.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, the questions are coming thick and fast now, so I will pick a few out. Someone's put, swimming is a requirement. Is there a document we need to prove that to show that they've reached that requirement?
No, you don't. I suppose you have to do something called wet drills if you're not aware. So you have to jump into the deep end of a swimming pool, put a life jacket on, and then swim 50 meters, and then you have to be able to get into a life raft as well. So it would become very apparent, I think, when you jumped into the pool and didn't come back up again. So but hopefully, obviously if you can't swim, don't either go and learn to swim, but don't lie about it, because it would be horrible for you to get all the way through your training and then fail one of the first things that you do when you join BA.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any restrictions on eyesight, like wearing glasses?
No, so that's I suppose common myth. you can wear glasses, contact lenses to correct your eyesight. That goes on as a restriction, or an OML, is it called? I can't actually remember what an OML stands for. You remember, Catherine?
Pardon, sorry?
What an OML stands for on a class one? An
Oh my goodness.
operating something limitation. I can never remember what
Yeah,
it stands for.
someone might have to help us out in the
Yeah.
question box here. I've only got class 2, so
Okay.
not
So
100% sure.
basically it just puts on there's an OML will go onto your class one, and it just says that you have to be wearing contact lenses or glasses to correct your eyesight to the standard vision.
Perfect. Quite a few questions about jobs working in aviation. Is that something that you would view as a plus if you had a job working in aviation beforehand, or if you're working in another industry at the moment and maybe looking at crossing over into aviation in any capacity?
Yeah, listen, again, kind of with everything, it's not a must, but knowing another side of the airline and how it works. So going to show my age, but I was flying when September the 11th happened, and some of the pilots who'd finished training came and worked as cabin crew until the industry picked back up again. And it made a real difference when they then were in the flight deck and flying, because they understood what was going on behind the flight deck door. And it really changed the culture at BMI at the top. I felt that's my personal opinion. I felt it changed the culture a little bit, because they were coming out and helping us. They would come out and offer to make us a cup of tea. The kind of silly examples, but it was it just helped them having an understanding. And actually, one of our pilots during COVID went and worked in cargo, IAG cargo, while we weren't flying aircraft. And I remember when he came back flying, he said, "I'm never going to moan about the cargo being late to the aircraft ever again, because I understand how complex it is now." So it just gives you a different experience and a different perspective while you're sat there understanding how other stuff works behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. I will actually just answer a couple of questions that
Yeah.
I'm seeing here. So, quite a few questions on will we be running any more days at Waterside? I certainly hope so. We've had some really successful days so far, so I'm sure we will do more of those in the future. So keep a good lookout on our, social media, emails if you're not signed up for those, and LinkedIn. And Lucy, would you mind just letting us know the email again that people can ask if they've got any specific questions?
Yeah, so we abbreviate everything. So to make it easier, it's literally SPA, so SPA@ba.com.
Perfect. Because I can see quite a few of you have put some really quite specific questions in the chat box. So it might be better off just getting in contact directly with your specific inquiry, because I can see that it is very specific. So please do have a look at that and get in contact. And also love all the people that put OML, operational multi-pilot limitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. There you go.
That's really helpful. We had about 3 in a row there, so thank you so much for doing that. And I've got a couple of questions. Just we'll kind of round it up, but a couple of questions on how long are we looking at for the application process, kind of end to end? Is it around 6 months or?
Yeah, so it's quite a long process for a number of reasons. One being the number of people that apply. So we want to make sure that everybody gets a fair shot at it. So last year we actually 8,000 people, as I said, were successful. So we sat as a team and read 8,000 applications. So obviously that takes time. There was then an audio interview that needed to be listened to. So at each stage, it does take us a bit of time to make sure that we're giving everybody a fair shot at us looking at their application. And then beyond the audio interview, the flight school stage is 3 stages. So there's the online testing with the flight school. There's then a group exercise which happens at Waterside, and some of the BA testing happens then. If you're successful at that point, you go to a one-to-one interview online with the flight school. If you're then successful, you come back to the BA assessment. But even the BA assessment, with the number of people we're assessing, and I suppose one thing I didn't say is the last 2 years we've had approval to recruit up to 200 people, which is fantastic. That there's that much opportunity. The first year that we launched, we started with 60. very quickly realised how fantastic the standard was, and we got approval to go to 100 while we were in the process. So the following year, we asked for more numbers. So obviously, to assess people, kind of even the last BA stage, takes us somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks to assess everybody. We've then got a lot of data that we then need to go over and work out who it is that's been successful. So that then takes, so if, I suppose if you're on the very first day of assessment, you might wait 2 months before you get an outcome at that last stage, but the overall end to end will probably be about 6 or 7 months.
Okay, amazing. Are there any different British Airways medical requirements to that of a Class 1 medical, or does that kind of encompass it?
So we do ask, so we have our own health service. So when you, if you're successful, we'd ask you to send a copy of your Class 1 medical to our health service, along with 2 forms. One's a self-declaration form and one your GP completes. That goes to that health service and they'll review it. If they've got any questions, they'll come back to you with those questions. But I suppose it's only if you put something or the doctor puts something on your form that they might have a couple of questions for you. So I suppose we don't have a different requirement, but we have another check in with you on your medical.
Perfect. And quite a few questions actually from people who already work at British Airways in a different role, which is great. And they're just asking, would they go through the same process and have to do the same screening and everything as those coming from outside of British Airways?
Yeah, so the process is exactly the same for everybody. But what we would ask is, if you work for BA, we have something called Job Search, which is in our internal careers website. Because that will then identify to us that you are internal, because if you are successful, the likelihood is that you've gone through the referencing. You would have gone through some referencing, but the flying referencing is slightly different to if you're working in head office. But because you've already been through some of the BA vetting, we prioritise you onto the earlier courses as well. So make sure if you're internal, make sure you let us know you're internal.
Perfect. And we've got a few questions on kind of tips for different parts of the assessment. I know obviously you mentioned earlier, British Airways, you host your own webinars. Where can they find those webinars again about Speedbird?
Yeah, so on the careers website, on the actual, if you put careers.ba.com, on the home page, about halfway down, it says meet the pilot recruitment team. And if you click learn more, it will take you to a Zoom hub. So there's 1 or 2 previously recorded webinars on there that you can watch back. And then, as I said, the next one's 2nd of December, and then the next one will be the first Wednesday first Wednesday of the month in February.
Amazing. And I think we'll end on the $1 million question, which I'm sure I already know the answer to. But when is it opening again?
So we haven't confirmed that yet. So, but it will be slightly later than it was this year. So keep an eye out, follow us on social media, and you'll be kept up to date. And also, obviously, we work very closely with Elevate Her, so we would let Catherine and her team know so they can send communication out to you if you don't happen to be registered for job alerts, to make sure that you've not missed when the launch date is.
Yeah, absolutely. So you heard it here first, everyone. Subscribe, sign up. As soon as we know what's going on and we can share it, of course, it will be all over our channels. So please do follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, we're even on TikTok now, would you believe it? And obviously our newsletter and everything like that. So that will close out the questions for today. Thank you so much, Lucy, for joining us. Honestly, it's been brilliant and I'm sure so helpful for so many people. And yeah, hopefully we could do another one in the future. This has been lovely.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's lovely to have you all online, and yeah, hopefully it was helpful. And good luck for those who are applying next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck, everyone. And obviously, Elevate Her, I always say this, we love feedback. If there's anything you'd like to see from us, any particular webinars, anything else, please let us know. We always want to hear from you and to hear what you would like from your community. So with that being said, have a lovely evening, everyone. Good luck to those applying. And yeah, just have a great rest of your day.